Hi, y'all, it's me, Admiral Terrible, back here with Apollo Justice Ace Attorney. As it stands, I'm in the middle of editing Apollo Justice Part 21, and I was just like, God, I want to play Apollo Justice now. And so I stopped editing it, and now I'm here. I also just got done recording an episode of Guilty Gear where I did not get a single ranked match to happen because they were just none. It was a bit like going into the middle of an empty canyon and just shouting, who wants to play games with me? So I'm back here with Ace Attorney. I almost called it Guilty Gear. And something that occurred to me, and I made a joke about this in the Part 20 description, I think. I was like, hey, wait a minute, all these things about paint. That's funny, because there was paint all over the car and stuff in the second case. But then I thought about it, and it was actually kind of funny how this thing is about a painter. La Miroir is described as the landscape painter in sound, and then there was also paint, like a paint job going on the Kataki's mansion. Can't think of what had to do with paint in the first case, if anything. So it's probably not an actual connection between them all. But never mind about that, because we were in the middle of interrogating Spark Brushel, by which I mean cross-examining, of course. But we just found him sweat abnormally and then suck the sweat back into his armpit, which is, I feel like, should be documented in like some kind of museum. Like after this case is done, obviously. And his defense, simple as it may be, was that a man can't help his glands, you know. It's more than that. When Mr. Misham's talent was mentioned, you suddenly began to sweat buckets. You're hiding something about his talent. What? That's ridiculous. Evidence time. Let's show where Mr. Misham's true talent lay. It just so happens I have evidence showing the talent mentioned in that letter. Right. I'm sorry, just to get my head back into this, I'm assuming he was referring to the copying of paintings, which would suggest that this is the one that I'm meant to be showing. I can't help but wonder what the court is supposed to conclude from this evidence. I was wrong. Oh, other than that you made a horrible mistake. Man burns bridge, forgets to cross first, end quote. That's a good one. Oh, let's try that again. All I have to do is reveal what Mr. Misham really was. That shouldn't be so hard, right? It just so happens I have evidence showing the talent mentioned in that letter. Right, that talent. And what was the letter? Okay, well the letter doesn't actually explicitly mention the talent, it just says, I've paid for the thing. Wait, but his talent was forging art, right? So wouldn't it be... the one that he's only partly doing because the rough sketch doesn't look anything like it? Unless, I suppose, perhaps they could also be referring to the hidden painting, which is the one he was copying from. Nah! This painting was found in Mr. Misham's studio. There are two problems with this painting. The first is it wasn't painted by Mr. Misham. The second is that there was another painting in the studio, which looked exactly like this one, except it was only half done. I feel like that one should have also worked here, but whatever. It's fine. Then we have a letter discussing a payment of $100,000, which is just a certain business operation. The business of making forgeries! Oh, please stop trying to asphyxiate yourself in the middle of the courtroom. There's surely some rule against that, right, Judge? Oh wait, I also just realized his eyes are actually twisting to the side as well. It's not just his glasses. That is all, Your Honor. This guy looks like Faust. Everyone, please, everyone. Can we keep this private, please? This is my story, my scoop. That's not how it works in a court of law. Forgery. That's a serious crime. Drew Misham is known as an artist these days, but there were rumors he dabbled in another kind of art until a few years back. Another art meaning forgery. Drew Misham was talented, alright. Talented at making precise, detailed fakes. A fact that certain criminal elements were quick to discover. Criminal elements? What? You can't seriously be talking about... Exactly. I'm talking about forging evidence. Oh, really? The rumor started circulating 7 years ago. Oh, I don't at all like how those two, forging evidence and 7 years ago, are being slammed together now. I was wondering what was up with he was able to forge metal and wood stuff, and I was like, what would that be necessary for if he was just forging paintings? But you could surely forge some other stuff that way. So, are we to understand that this letter, this payment of $100,000 was for... Exactly! Forged evidence nets tidy profit, end quote. I still like that. Man burns bridge, forgets to cross it first. That's great. Order! 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 Why, it's like our victim was living a double life! This is my chance! So the victim had ties to the criminal world, right? He could have had plenty of enemies we know nothing about. This is my first time hearing of this criminal world. We certainly found no criminal connections when we conducted our investigation. Okay, but this is obviously evidence now. But how do you explain all this money? You have to admit there's a possibility of some illegal activity here. But there is no proof tying this letter to our case. Our case was and remains simple from the beginning. Only the defendant could have poisoned that mug that night. What the hell are you talking about? It doesn't matter if it's not connected to the actual murder, if it suggests that there's other illegal stuff going on, because that suggests other suspects, potentially. Only the defendant could have poisoned the mug that night. You don't know that. And you, of course. Hey! The only thing I poison is my pen. My pen, when I'm writing reviews. Mr. Bruttle, your testimony to this point has been quite unreliable. It doesn't speak well of your reporting acumen. Well, his is the only one we have to indict our defendant, so... What are you talking about? My journalism is rock solid. Journalism so solid you could stand an elephant on it, end quote. In any case, let's hear a summarized recap of your testimony. If we can ascertain the situation in that studio from the recap, the trial is over. Apollo, what's he talking about? The cross-examination showed Mr. Bruttle didn't have reason or means to poison him. As long as there are no other suspects, then the killer had to be Vera, that's what. This next testimony is our last chance. Mr. Bruttle, your testimony, please. We still haven't had a chance to pull out that poisoned picture frame, which is obviously strange, so I hope that happens soon. The interview. A recap. Ow, that really hurt my arm for some reason. The only other person in the studio that night was the defendant. It was Vera who poured the coffee. She's admitted as much herself. The only thing that touched Drew's lips during the interview was that mug. Nothing left that studio after he died. Nothing! Clearly the only one who could have poisoned him was his daughter. A nice testimony. Clear, succinct, and without room for doubt. Is it just me, or did we still not address the fact that there were 15 minutes in between, like there weren't 15 minutes in between when he drank from the mug and when he died, which is as it should be with the atrochrane. Ah, shucks, you really think so? I believe this clarifies the situation that night. Very well, Mr. Justice, you may begin your final cross-examination. All right. I still have one trump card left to play, and I won't let this trial end until I use it. I hope we're talking about the same thing here, which is that picture frame. The only other person in the studio that night, no bracelet, so I'm gonna have to figure another way out of this, in the studio that night was the defendant. It was Vera who poured the coffee. She's admitted as much herself, which is not... Well, I guess it's kind of relevant because the mug is what was the means of ingress, fair enough. The only thing that touched Drew's lips during the interview was that mug. And nothing left that studio after he died. Nothing. Clearly, the only one who could have poisoned him was his daughter. What do you think, Apollo? Everything he's saying seems so not flawed. Well, that's kind of what you want from a testimony, really. I need to keep my eye on what matters. How and why was Drew Misham killed? Vera poured the coffee. That's not going to change. But if that coffee didn't kill him, I need to find what did and prove it. Right, it's strange to me that he specifies the only thing that touched his lips, but I mean, a poison that deadly could get into you, probably, I guess, if you breathed it in with your nose, right? Or maybe even if you touched it. I don't even know. If it's 0.002 milligrams was all it needed to kill you, then it could get it into your pores, man. Let's push on a bit of this because I'm not convinced we have the right point yet. Hold it! But that doesn't prove Vera poisoned it. How many times have we heard that one, Hairforehead? The poison reached its victim via that coffee mug. We still haven't proved that exactly either. Just there was poison there. It could have been from anything else. And from where did that coffee come, Not to beat a dead horse again and again, but perhaps you could fill us in? I'm on it. You need a horse to beat? I'm your man. It was Vera who poured the coffee? Hold it! Are we really sure about... Yes, no, we are. And you witnessed her pouring the coffee. Of course I didn't witness it. When she came in with that tray, the coffee was already poured, and it's steaming. Let us not forget the defendant has admitted to pouring the coffee herself. Okay, came in. So, just to understand here, she was in a different room that no one else was in or saw when this coffee was poured, and that's the mug that killed the thing. That's something. Let us not forget that the defendant has admitted to pouring the coffee herself. She could be under threat. I heard her statement. I poured, I served, and I killed. I don't think she said I killed. What? That last part was just a little joke. I don't think I'm going to get anywhere with this coffee mug. I need to find another weak spot in this case. I concur. The only thing that touched his lips was that mug. How curious, hold it, that you should bring that up when it wasn't actually called into question. You're sure about that? Well, to be really, really precise, I was busy gobbling mint candies the whole time. There were mint candies? One of those candies might have been poisoned. Yet at the time of the autopsy, no fresh fragrance of mint filled the room. And no mint residue was found. Okay, that's slightly more solid than no mint fragrance was found. It was a long shot anyway. Don't tell me you're still trying to prove this. You think the victim ate, drank, or otherwise ingested something other than coffee? Well, Mr. Justice, if you have some proof. Possibility is there, I can feel it. Just maybe not prove it yet. The possibility isn't gonna cut it, not now. Mr. Misham ingested that poison via a route other than that coffee. Don't say it. Wait, hang on. I think that's gonna be a not yet from me. I mean, maybe from the frame, but that doesn't really seem... Why would he be eating a frame? Let me push on the other ones first. Not yet. It can't be proven. I do believe our little forehead is growing up. Oh, the way the music stopped makes me think that that was maybe how I was supposed to progress this. Pity. We liked the rash, youthful forehead best. Another hole in this case that needs plugging before I can prove anything. But first things first, I better uncover a weak spot before I try to strike again. On with the cross-examination. Okay, good. Nothing left that studio after he died. Nothing. Nothing left it? Except for all the shit that I took. Like the letter and everything. Hold it! Not one thing? You're sure? You left it, I mean... Yep, as sure as can be. Well, with one exception. One exception? What? Journalist Spark Brushel does interview, leave studio, end quote. Yeah, and also, Vera. Oh, come on! It's a joke, get it? Not funny, I know, but still. Did something leave the studio that night? Why does that sound familiar? Or have I heard something like that before? Now that we've proven our witness is a comedian of sorts, I'd like to turn to our defense attorney before returning to the testimony. Do you have any idea what, if anything, might have left the studio that night? Not a thing or just one thing. What would have left? And it will be a piece of evidence, I figure. Was there anything mentioned in any testimony that wasn't there when we got there? Both Brushel's cup and Drew's mug were still there, so it's not like there was a different cup that was missing or anything like that. All the paintings were still there when we got there, at least we assume. This was opened, but we don't know when, and it seems like the complete letter is still there. I think this is a red herring. I don't know what that one might be. I can't think of a single thing. If anything did leave, wouldn't Mr. Brushel have noticed? That I would. Nothing left. Save myself, of course. Say that again and you'll be held in contempt of court. Let's get back to the cross-examination then. Right, okay, I don't think that was relevant. Clearly the only one who could have poisoned him was his daughter. Hold it! You say clearly, as though it were obvious. Poof. But this claim that the defendant poisoned the victim is merely conjecture. Ah, yes, well, you see, in my business it's all about making the most ridiculous things sound right. It's kinda true when you think about it. A bad habit, I know. Yes, well, actually... I guess this is more a case of ridiculous journalist sounds wrong, end quote. The court is forced to agree with you. Please refrain from wild conjecture. Understood loud and clear. If only I could believe that. Right, okay. I'm not confident this is it, but let's try, say the only thing that touched his lips was the picture frame, or could have been. Again, I'm not convinced that it needs to have touched his lips exactly, but this is another way for the poison to have gotten to him, is the point. Oh man, my headphones are really coming apart. Oh, you see that? I've been breaking them in multiple places just by dropping them and stuff. They're in pieces up here. All right, let's try this again and submit the frame. I can prove it. Proof is possible. I gotta risk it. Oh, excellent. Let's see your proof then. Please show us your evidence. What evidence shows that the victim wasn't poisoned via his coffee mug? All right, that's a slightly more, I feel more comfortable putting the frame here. Blah! That doesn't inspire me with tremendous amounts of confidence. Must I explain this over and over and over? We don't need possibilities here, Hair Forehead. We need proof. I know that. You should also know that every proof has its moment. Perhaps you're a bit early? I can tell you what we know at this point. The victim put nothing to his mouth but that coffee mug. Another hole in this case that needs plugging before I can prove anything. But first things first, I better uncover a weak spot before I try to strike again. Okay. They didn't actually take off my health for that, so that's their way of telling me that that was a right thing to do, but I did it at the wrong time. I kind of figured that might be coming because that was more about talking about ways that it could have touched his face. So I'm gonna go out on a limb then and say that I'm not supposed to submit any evidence there. So let's submit evidence on the other one that we were able to, which was nothing left the studio. What might have left? Let's just go through every piece of evidence we have. Actually, it didn't actually ask us for evidence, right? So let's try it, and then if it asks for evidence, then I will put one. I will look for one. Just one thing left. Don't know what it is. I think one thing might very well have left the studio that night, actually. A certain something that has vanished from the crime scene. By which you mean something other than our witness? Of course. Don't tell me. Vera Misham? Believe me, any comic relief I may provide is entirely unintentional. Then let's see what you've got for us, Mr. Justice. Well, this thing wasn't at the scene of the crime, so I can't show it to you. But I do have evidence that shows how it could have been taken from the scene. Right, the letterbox, I'm guessing is where we're going with that. Because it probably would have been easy if those two were having an interview for someone to slip something in there. But I have no idea what might have been taken. Another no, okay, it would be, a painting wouldn't fit in that. But I guess some of the other means of poisoning, maybe? Either way. Take that! This is the only link between that studio and the outside world. A letterbox? What did Mr. Brushel just tell us? When he entered the studio on the night of the murder, the victim had just finished writing a letter. Yeah, I said that. And yeah, it was true. Oh, okay, I thought he was just wrong and that Drew was just looking at the other letter, but that actually makes more sense. Furthermore, he went on to tell us that he put the letter in a yellow envelope and put it in the letterbox. Ah, but that very same letterbox was empty. In other words, that night the yellow envelope disappeared. Which would completely override our earlier objection that it was a red envelope, but never mind that. Ah, yes, intriguing. So an envelope has disappeared from the scene of the crime? Of course, this changes nothing. He has a point, Mr. Justice. But that could have been another means of poisoning. What does you talk about? What does you mean? What we're trying to figure out here is how the poison got into Mr. Misham. Is it really important that this envelope the witness says he saw disappeared? Well, if it did disappear, then something did leave the studio that night. That seems very important to me. Very well then, the witness will add this to his testimony. You got it. I still think this fails to change anything, Hair Forehead. Well, you think that all the time. I wouldn't be so sure. A letter disappeared from the crime scene that night. This is exactly the opening I've been looking for. A letter was put in the post from the studio, but I hardly think that matters. Hold it! Maybe it does! Well, I mean, if he was writing that, maybe it was the sheet of paper that was poisoned or something like that. Nothing could be more serious than an envelope disappearing from that studio. And you were hiding that fact from us. Yes, well, actually, I don't argue the possibility that a letter disappeared from the studio, but Hair Forehead, isn't there a much more serious question before us? Right. How Mr. Misham was poisoned, I know. But Mr. Brushel's testimony has changed, which means the facts of the case have too. And what he's told us means something entirely different now. I'm starting to think. Let's keep thinking, Apollo. I feel like the frame has to have something to do with this, and I think it's notable also that the frame was completely empty, right? So perhaps he took whatever was in the picture frame out, put it in the letter, and sent it off, but someone else had poisoned the picture frame long before that? And so he got poison on him from there, and then 15 minutes later, because he was just finishing up the letter when the interview started, so that would make sense for why 15 minutes later he dies from it. Let's try presenting, oh, not here, that's not where we want to present it. Let's try presenting it here, because this could have been sent in the letter. Objection! That doesn't sound promising. Your Honor, that statement contradicts this evidence. It does? I don't see anything contradictory. You sure about that? Objection overruled. Try to think before you make accusations. Yeah, that didn't go so well. All right, that was not it. Although maybe that's changed. What that means is that this point here is just, I can put the picture frame here now. It didn't hurt me last time, so I may as well try, right? Oh, I can't skip this anymore. Mr. Misham ingested that poison via a route other than the coffee. I can prove it. Proof is possible. Here goes nothing. I don't think he did a guitar riff last time prior. You do understand what we need, yeah? Proof, Hair Forehead, not possibilities. Of course. And Prosecutor Gavin, I hope you understand. I'm ready to give you that proof. What did you say? I have proof of the disappearing envelope. I saw him writing a letter, I did. Which was picked up by the mailman, I assume? Of course. Which means that envelope had a stamp on it. A stamp. Ah, that was what was in the tiny frame. As we all know, stamps come with dried glue on the back. In order to use the glue, you have to wet it by licking the stamp. That's why you... Okay. Okay! Yes! I'm starting to understand how that would work now. No one worth talking to actually licks stamps in this day and age. He was a recluse. He even left his place in 7 years. It was possible. Even if you wanted to talk to him, you couldn't. He's dead after all. Okay, so we licked the stamp, but wait. How does that explain the atroquinine on the rim of the coffee mug? Well, it was still on his face when he went to take a sip. If he licked the back of a poison stamp, then the poison would get on his tongue, yes? What would then happen if he put the coffee mug to his mouth, Those traces on the mug weren't the killer's doing. It was the other way around. What? The coffee mug didn't poison Mr. Misham. Mr. Misham poisoned the coffee mug himself after having licked the stamp. I feel like you pushed on the wrong point there. But yes, I think we understand now. Order! But that doesn't... Does it? Recall, if you would. Atroquinine is a slow-acting poison, yes? The poison entered his body when he put the stamp on that envelope. But his time wasn't up until the very moment he touched his lips to that cup of joe. Which would explain why he died more or less instantly after drinking it as opposed to blah 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 15 minutes after. What are you writing? Yes, it was good, right? You have something to add, Mr. Brushel? Is that why your nose is doing that? Uh-oh. His nose is picking up another scent. As I believe I mentioned earlier. Oh, that's the thing, see? After he put his lender in that envelope, Mr. Bishop sat there searching his desk drawer for something. He has a stamp, a so-called postage stamp, end quote. Oh, did he? Oh, he might have said that, actually. But you know, I don't seem to remember him ever finding one. Maybe he'd just run out? Incidentally, we searched the desk drawer at the scene of the crime. There were no stamps. Not a single one. Okay, this is where they're going to ask me where the stamp might have been, and it's the picture frame. That does pose a problem. How will you prove that the stamp was coated with poison? Actually, I'm glad no other stamps were found. It makes proving the stamp he used was poison possible. Good show, good show. You can't even prove there was a stamp at the scene in the first place. Well, let's hear what the defense has to say anyway. Where's your evidence that proves the existence of this poison stamp? Bada-ba-ding, bada-ba-doom. Well, that certainly is a cute little frame. And by little, I mean really little. It was on the victim's desk, Your Honor. Quite empty, as you can see for yourself. I noticed that too during my inspection. So what? Apparently you weren't as observant as you should have been. You see, when you saw this frame, it was missing something quite important. Missing something? Yes, a pale bluish stain on the inside of the frame. Atroquinine residue! What? Why wasn't I told about this? The frame is only 2 inches square. The face of the frame is even smaller. Maybe an inch wide at most? You weren't saying that there was a stamp in there. Oh, but I am! Oh, but I am! Tell me, what fits in such a small frame? A commemorative stamp, perhaps? Chatter, 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 chatter. Brilliance, brilliance, genius, genius. Order! 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 The poison stamp was in this frame? Bush! Impossible! Prosecutor Gavin, why would he put something like that on his desk? Okay, well that's not impossible, that's just unlikely. Don't tell me he had it there so he could commit suicide if the mood struck. You know, can I say something? I had a thought, see? What, Mr. Russell? And please stop jittering around like that. The victim is a forger, right? There's a lot of money in that line of work. Forger forges friends, makes enemies too. End quote. So the poison stamp might have been a murder weapon aimed at him. More likely. That's what helps my case, anyways. Well played. Bravo, encore. Oh, rich. That's rich. Leave the ridiculous flights of fancy to the Governor's song lyrics, please. Finally, something we agree on. The stamp was a murder weapon? Nonsense. Murder is a simple business. Who would go to such lengths? No one. It's possible. That's not evidence, Gavin. Oh, I disagree. Come again? He was recluse, right? It's hard to get to this guy. Recall, if you would, the victim's reclusive lifestyle. Drew Misham hid from the world. He avoided meetings. His only contact with the outside world was the mail. The mail? Now, if you wanted to kill someone you couldn't meet, but you knew read letters, a stamp would be the perfect weapon. Ridiculous. Where's your proof? I want proof. Show us evidence that this poison stamp was sent to him as a murder weapon. I might not have evidence, per se, but things are finally starting to come together. What is it, Apollo? Your fists are trembling. I think I know what happened. I don't believe it, but I can see it. I think I know how Mr. Misham was killed. Well, fill us in, Mr. Justice. A certain piece of evidence points to the truth, Your Honor. I can show you how someone with the intent to kill sent Mr. Mission to the stamp of death. I'm not sure I can. Oh, never mind. Okay, this does actually say, sign the papers and send in the enclosed envelope with the enclosed stamp within 3 days. So that's how someone would have sent a stamp. Ah! Isn't this the envelope, the one from 7 years ago? Think about the text of the letter again. I wasn't sure it actually mentioned the sending of a stamp, but it does, thankfully. And we're on a roll. There were 2 pages in this envelope. This is page 1, and this is page 2. I want to draw your attention to one phrase in particular. Send in the enclosed envelope with the enclosed stamp within 3 days. The enclosed stamp, Your Honor. In other words, if I have this straight, the stamp, poison, on the stamp, lick, lick, gasp, end quote. That's not a good headline. Now, what if he had done exactly as the letter had asked? He would sign the document, put it in the envelope, and put the stamp on it, right? Then he would put it in his letterbox. 15 minutes wouldn't have elapsed between affixing the stamp and mailing the letter. But the clock started ticking, and when the time came, he drew his last breath, and the murder weapon would be taken away from the scene. Quite conveniently, thanks to the postal system. A pretty easy way to kill a recluse like that. Man, you're really fond of doing the air guitar this particular trial session. Such a splendid imagination you have here, Forehead. Come on, this is the third case you've worked with me. Surely you know at this point that it's sometimes right. Let me confirm one thing with you, if I might. So this poison stamp was inside this envelope from 7 years ago, yeah? Is that what you'd have us believe? Really? You're gonna say that why didn't he do it 7 years ago when he was asked? Well... It is a little bit of a stretch, but there's a possibility. Yes, a very small possibility. How small, I wonder? A poison stamp in this envelope. A stamp that then became the murder weapon. How do you intend to prove this seeming coincidence? Well, I mean, we could try scanning the envelope, because I don't think we tried that. Well, it was 7 years ago, and we don't even know who sent that letter. And your answer is silence. I see. Very well, I move to... It's not nice to pick on the Fräulein, Clavier. Is that Christoph? Who else would say Fräulein? Why are you here? What? Ah, Emma? Am I in a computer simulation? What just happened? Am I hallucinating? Well, like my Christoph Gavin impression? Did I sound like him? Don't quit your day job. He was so scared when he said that. Okay, I hope that was just them playing it off as a joke and I'm not in some kind of like simulation. Oh, that was so good. Don't you have a crime scene to be looking after, Fräulein Detective? Someone had to come dig you out of all the mess you're making of this case. Mess? You know, none of this would happen if you just trusted in science a little more. You can find out if that stamp was in that envelope easy. Check the envelope. Care to explain yourself, Fräulein Detective? Glare at me all you want, but science is on my side. It's all in the residue, right? No, that's right! The poison detection spray. Produce the red envelope at once! You can open it on authority of the court. And so I will. Oh, they're gonna make me do it? Why can't it spray? Oh, it was just taking a long time. I'm not finding anything. Ah, wait, hang on, hello. Ah, and in the square shape of a stamp! This feels a little conclusive, doesn't it? Ah! Well, would you look at that? No mistaking it. That's the troquinine residue. Thanks, Emma. You're the best. I don't believe it. A murder weapon from the past. Now 7 years later, it bears its fangs at last. Absolutely outrageous. Tell me why. Ain't nothing but a mistake. Why didn't this murder take place 7 years ago? Well, there's one possibility. Maybe Mr. Misham figured it out. Figured what out? He realized that the person who sent that letter wanted him dead. So he sent his reply with a different stamp. And put his decisive evidence in a frame. Who is holding right now? Oh, it was Brushel. Ah, you're still here? Can I make a statement here, on the record? I, Spark Razortooth Brushel, claim this scoop is mine. Drew Misham killed in cold blood by sender of 7-year-old letter, end quote. No, maybe something more succinct. Star falls after 7-year delay, end quote. Please be quiet.
Order! 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 I see no room for further argument here. Although I admit this is all coming as quite a shock. To think that the murder weapon reached his mouth after 7 years. Stamp his ticket straight to afterlife, end quote.
Uh-oh. I think the witness is a bad influence on our judge.
Brsh. I see no need for further debate on this matter.
Based on the music I'm saying, are we at the end of this first trial? Woof. If that's true, then we went through that pretty quickly, and I'd like to get back to investigating, please.
The sender of that letter 7 years ago could hardly have been our defendant. Apollo.
I think we just won.
Very well. This court finds... Oh, no, okay, it's not that easy, surely. This court finds the defendant...
I'd love to hear what you have to say, although I'm sure it's wrong and stupid. Is this the bright future of our legal system?
Prosecutor Gavin?
Alright, whatever your nonsense you're about to spout, you have to admit that you were like, this is completely impossible, and then we proved that it was entirely very possible, and seemed like it was very likely given how that stamp, and then the envelope that was said to be enclosed within the stamp. You can't say it's all nonsense anymore. A ticket to the afterlife from 7 years ago? Tickets for Gaviner's shows are invalid after 2 weeks.
But it doesn't make sense any other way.
It boggles my mind that so many people haven't noticed this. There's a fatal contradiction in Air Forehead's claim. Let me know. A contradiction? A poison stamp was placed in this envelope 7 years ago, whereupon it was framed, until now. If that's the case, then why would Drew Misham have done what he did? Licked it? Yeah, I might explain that. He must have realized it was poisoned. Oh. Therein lies the rub. 7 years ago, the forger Drew Misham sensed a trap and put the stamp in a frame. I do not debate this, but this begs the question. Why, 7 years later, did he use that stamp on the night of the murder? Digit of the murder, I almost said. I'm very good at reading. Surely you don't mean to suggest that Mr. Misham simply forgot? He put the murder weapon in a frame on his desk for 7 years, and forgot? It doesn't okay, obviously that's weird. You expect us to believe he's spraying the trap on himself? I mean, no, but it's still obviously evidence of weird stuff going on, right? Like, it obviously warrants further investigation?
Well, I admit, this is all quite shocking myself. It does seem highly unlikely that he would fall afoul of a trap that had been sitting on his desk for 7 years. Apollo!
I don't think we're winning anymore. I'm glad to see we're all back in the real world now. Welcome back to reality. We've been waiting for you. Objection! Stop being a smartass! Okay, then how do you explain the poison stamp that was in this envelope? The poison stamp? Where exactly is this poison stamp again? Have you brought it to court for us? I see no proof that such a thing ever existed. Okay, even still, there is proof that is something weird. What about the atroquinine residue, huh? Oh, I agree, that does seem to be a atroquinine residue, but hair of forehead. It's certainly no stamp. Yeah, but... Even if your precious poison stamp did exist, Drew Misham never would have used it. That is all.
I believe we've come to a conclusion. Again. Oh, Apollo, were we wrong the whole time?
I can't believe it. The poison traces match up. It can't be coincidence.
I'd like to bring some closure to this issue sometime this year, Mr. Justice.
Yes, Your Honor.
Let's review the facts and see where we stand. 7 years ago, Drew Misham received a red envelope. There were traces of the poison atroquinine on the document inside that envelope. A similar trace was also found at the crime scene, in the shape of a stamp, don't forget that please, on this tiny picture frame. The defense has indicated the possibility of an envelope that left the scene of the crime with the poison stamp on it.
Yes, but even if this envelope contained a poison stamp and Drew Misham, knowing this, put it in a frame, he never would have used that stamp.
I'm afraid you're right, which means there is a fatal flaw in the defense's case.
I haven't been on the round track this whole time, I'm sure of it. The traces of atroquinine, the envelope, the frame, and Drew Misham's mysterious death. They're all connected somehow.
Well, Mr. Justice, do you have a conclusion for us?
I'd like to investigate more is my conclusion. The defense stands by its case, Your Honor. We've seen that the logical outcome of the evidence makes no sense, which means that one of our clues must be a fake. A fake clue. Fascinating. One or more, or if not fake, unrelated. And if we find this fake, your wild fantasies will prove quite reasonable, yeah? The fake clue that's thrown us off the poison's trail is none other than... Well, how would I know? Drew Misham doesn't make sense. I mean, he definitely died, and I think we agree on how he died, and there's no evidence suggesting against how he died. It seems weird. Well, a few things seem weird. I mean, if you enclosed a stamp with an envelope, just in an envelope, without sticking it to the piece of paper, because then it would be hard to get off without, like, ripping it, then it wouldn't have just been one mark in that one place, right, where we found it? But then again, the frame... There was poison on the inside, no poison on the outside seems kind of weird, especially considering you have to unbolt the 3 things to make it go. Well, my health bar isn't even flashing, so I figure we don't even lose anything from this, but the frame seems almost too convenient. Let's try saying that.
This frame is the fake clue?
Without a doubt, Your Honor. Well, there's a bit of doubt. Wasn't it you who presented this evidence to the court?
Oh, hold on a second, Apollo. The poison on the envelope, that frame, and the coffee mug, they're all connected somehow.
Oh, right. I can hear it already. It looks like the fake was you, Hair Forehead.
We can flog ourselves later, Apollo. Now's the time for thinking.
Okay, well then, if you're saying that the envelope was also connected, then I guess Drew Misham, his death was somehow reported wrong or something.
The victim was a fake clue? I'm afraid I don't understand.
I'll explain. We have an envelope, a frame, and a mug. I'm sorry, I'm swapping between envelope and envelope. An envelope, a frame, and a mug linked by poison. That all makes sense. What doesn't make sense is the victim himself. Congratulations, you've completely lost me. So the fake evidence is none other than the master of fake himself, the forger. Makes a good story, I'll give you that. I guess it would make sense. He could forge his own evidence for his own death. The fake clues, fakes, forgeries.
I know that face. That's the I just had an idea face.
I don't know if I'm right, but I'm going with it anyway. What if our forger is the fake?
Come again.
That's not Clavier's voice. Come again. 7 years ago, our forger sniffed a trap and stepped aside. 7 years passed. Now the forger stumbles into that very same trap and dies. Why?
That's what I want to know.
Because the forger who was killed was a fake. Here we are again. The victim was a fake? You mean to say the person who died wasn't actually Drew Misham? One forger smelled the trap. One forger fell into the trap. That's 2 forgers, and one of them was a fake.
Order! Order! Order!
I don't even know who the other one could possibly be. We don't have any other ideas for that. So you are telling us that Drew Misham, the victim, was a fake. Well, if he was the fake, who was the real forger? You better not be claiming there was some kind of switcheroo.
I'm afraid you're going to have to back up your story. Mr. Justice, show us just who the real Drew Misham was.
If Drew Misham wasn't the real forger, there's only one other person it could have been. Understood, Your Honor. Forger Drew Misham himself was a forgery. The real forger was... Well, okay, it's one of these two, but Spark doesn't really make sense to me. Vera? Take that! There can be only one explanation, really. The real identity of the forger known as Drew Misham is none other than his only daughter, Vera Misham. Well, that would... that doesn't exactly, get her off scot-free from the murder, and makes her more suspect than ever.
Order! Order! Order!
Mr. Justice, this is going out on a limb even for you.
No, I kind of agree.
I mean, Vera, a forger? Let's consider it before you write it off entirely. If you look at the paintings in the studio, one fact becomes quite clear. Forgery had been taking place in that studio for quite some time. The forger wasn't caught in that trap 7 years ago. This can only mean that the one who was caught in the trap wasn't the forger.
Well, actually that does make a certain kind of sense.
One more thing. So you think that Vera, at age 12, was being blackmailed? Only 2 sets of fingerprints were found in the forger's studio. Drew Misham's and Vera Misham's. If we know that Drew Misham wasn't the forger, that leaves only one possibility by process of elimination. The forger was Vera Misham. Well... I'm glad we're having more of this. Nice riff. Sweet chords, dude. Fascinating. That's what I thought. And also totally not something I would have ever considered. Hi again. Sorry I just accused you of crime.
Vera Misham? You've been paying attention to the trial so far?
Let's just ask her and be done with it, shall we? Who are you? Who is the forger, Drew Misham? Was that an expression of emotion I saw on her face? She's staring holes into Prosecutor Gavin's face, which is weird because she looks like she's looking left, which is where I am on the screen, but never mind. I'm used to being stared at by Fräuleins, believe me. Though they usually talk to me too. Tell us, were you the one who forged those works of art? Yes.
So the forger Drew Mission was you!
More smiley faces. Oh no, not a smiley face. What is that even? Oh, is it supposed to be like crying? Like there's one eye with a big tear? Yeah, okay. Yes, it was me.
What?
Not how I thought that was gonna go. The court was in an uproar and it wasn't coming down. We had to break for a 10-minute recess. We continued. Oh, okay, so maybe there's a part 1 and part 2 of the first of the day 1. Oh, we already knew that actually. I just forgot. Well, how about that? I'm sorry, Vera, are you mad? Please don't be. I'll buy you a pizza with my no money that I got from all the clients who haven't paid me. October 8th, 1:24 p.m. District Court Defendant Lobby number 6. Okay, so where exactly does this leave us, Apollo? Well, the Drew Misham who was killed wasn't Drew Misham the forger, basically. Huh?
Well, then who was he? Drew Misham the actual.
Well, he was actually doing her nails. So you really made those forgeries?
It's like you have to draw a facial expression that matches what you were saying before you speak every time, is that right?
Yes, for my father. I know it was wrong.
Could you tell us how it happened?
My father was a painter. I loved painting ever since I was a child. One day, Father saw it in me. He saw that I had the talent.
A talent for making forgeries?
How should I say it? It was not only paintings I made. Given the materials, I could make anything. Anything? Father was so proud, and I so happy.
Yes, I can tell from the smiley face.
But in the end, I was making those forgeries. I've never had a good constitution nor personality. Ouch, don't say that. I know very little of the world outside my door. No, because of me, Father is...
Do you know about this red envelope?
I remember that envelope. It was some time ago. So you were already, creating your works back then? I started when I was only 12 years old.
That's... Wow. I was like... I was joking, but that's... Wow.
You're more incredible than I took you for. Sorry, that not maybe... That sounds kind of wrong what I just said. Condescending or something.
Well, I'm very glad that I finally get to hear your voice. And I would positively relish in the opportunity to hear it even more next time on Apollo Justice Ace Attorney, because regrettably we're all out of time this time. So we finished the first part of that trial. I had a few trip-ups here and there, and I was getting dragged along by Apollo for a lot of that, but I chose most of the right evidence. So it wasn't the worst episode we've had. Hopefully I get my head around where everything is at more by the next time. So I figured that this is our first trial day and it's gonna go for part 1 and part 2, and then most likely we'll have at least one more investigation, because there's gotta be someone other than Vera, Spark, and Drew involved here, I think. If her father's name is actually Drew. If he is actually her father. We don't really know. Either way, I'm very happy you came along with me for this bit. Apollo said that this was earlier that this was the most troublesome witness, or sorry, not witness, but defendant that we've had in this game so far. I don't really think that's true. I think it was probably Waki. I killed him. What would you say? Who would you say was the most trouble defendant we've had? I mean, maybe I'm biased towards not saying it was her, because I'm obviously head over heels for her, and all her incredible character development we've seen so far in the 5 words she's spoken to us. Anyways, sorry, off topic. Thank you very much for coming around, and hopefully I will see you around. Admiral's gonna be out of here. Peace. Very well, Mr. Solid. Let's hear your testimony once more, please.
I don't think you should get 3 tries.
Neither do
I don't think that's very
That
accurate.
happens quite a bit. You'll
Hearing the time. Okay,
actually. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, no, you go.
Okay.
Actually, I didn't hear the time. I